Hi friends, it's Sarah from rufflesandrainboots.com, and today we're making a relaxing set of watercolor gnome bookmarks. They're really simple, and if you'd like to make them, boop, stick around. As always, please give this video a like so I know you're here crafting with me. So you can see I have some vibrant bookmarks, I have some pastel, I have a combination of watercolor and acrylic. So in order for me to list the supplies, I'm just going to show you what I'm using. This is watercolor paper. I got it at the craft store. They have some at the Dollar Tree. I'm going to be using a ruler to split my page, and I'm going to be using a very simple 6 for $1.25 color palette here for my paint and my markers. So we're going to make watercolor paint out of markers, but if you have watercolor paste or watercolor liquids, use those. You can use a watercolor brush or any old paintbrush you have, including a water brush. These are great for hand lettering if you want to try that. In order to do our outlines, you're going to need a fine liner of some kind. This is not picky. This is a Micron and this is the Sharpie fine. I prefer the Sharpie. There's no running. If you want white outlines, get yourself a Uniball Signo and it's in a white gel. Okay, so I'm going to also be using this ruler. I'm going to split it vertically, and that's that 6-inch line I measured from the bottom because I'm going to have to cut off the very top of my paper. And so in order to divide it in 3, I'm actually not going to like frame out each of these sections. I'm just going to cut it. Mine is 9 inches wide, so I'm just going to make these little tiny marks and cut it into 3 different sections on both the top and the bottom. So in order to make watercolors from markers, all you have to do is take any water-based marker. These are Tombow. You can take Crayolas and just write on the side of your palette well, add some water, and you can either make it vibrant or dilute it a little. With diluting, I will say that watercolors tend to dry a little lighter than they look on the paper when wet, so just keep that in mind. So for this example over here, I want to create a purple. So I'm going to add a couple of colors together. Right here is this. It's almost a blue-green. It's kind of a weird color. And you can also use these pastes. I'm just showing you I have them in there. So if I have a light watercolor like this, that purple, it's so light. I'm going to try and add a couple different things. So I'm going to add a little bit of pink, and then I'm going to also add this royal blue. Again, I'm just drawing on the side of it. I'll grab my watercolor brush and then just blend it in, and that is more vibrant because it will dry as a pastel. Okay, so again, like I said, you can use anything you have on hand as long as it is a water-based. If you add more water, it becomes less vibrant and less pigmented. So I'm going to be just using basic shapes. I'm not an artist. I don't know how to draw for real. I'm just using a sort of rounded off square at the bottom for the body, a triangle for the top, a circle or oval for the nose, and then I'm just adding in a couple of things like the brim of the hat and some accents. For this guy, it's super simple. You're basically going to draw one big tall triangle, nose in the middle, just give it a little bit of a brim, bring that on over the nose, and then bring down the beard and the sides. Super simple because the pretty, soft is going to come from our watercolor. So of course I have to draw a chunky gnome because I like the chunky gnomes. My first technique that I'm using after I pull my watercolor brush hair out of the way is watercolor pigment on a dry piece of paper. So this is kind of cool because you can layer this and you can make some parts light, some parts dark, and I'm going to show you how I do that using just the same color. So I put the whole thing down first, and then I just add a little additional watercolor right in some areas where there would be a little darkness, a little shadowing, or a little depth. That's it. Let that big little center section be a little lighter, and it'll look like she has a nice round tummy. So for watercolor, you can choose to color within the lines or get a little wild. And I'm going to show you both. I actually like the wild a little bit better. So when I looked at this purple, I didn't like how light it was, so I'm going to add a couple things. I'm going to drop in some pink and let it meld for just a second, and then I'm going to distribute that a little bit just with no water, just blending it out. So for the nose, I'm adding a little bit of yellow and then just touching the pink, and it'll blend in by itself for a nice bit of dimension. So you can see just dry brushing that water around that's already on the paper led to some pretty cool coloring over there. This is my favorite kind, where you're not in the lines, you go a little wild, just splatter some ink on the paper, and it just makes it look a little rough and rugged. If you have water-based markers like Tombows or Crayolas, you can actually draw directly onto the dry paper and then use water, just water, to blend that out. And that's what I did on the bottom of this guy here. You can stack this. Again, you can sprinkle a little bit of drops everywhere, get a little outside the lines, add a little more color in some areas and leave others blank. It's really fun. And then this one I'm going to dry brush on some watercolor, and then I'm going to combine the two methods where I just add on a little extra pigment even though my paper is already wet. It's really cool. It's great if you want to add some shadows or, you know, little worn parts of the hat. It's fun. And for the body, I'm going to do the yellow the same way. Again, just touching that pink, and it will bring in all the color for me. All right, so on the bottom of this one, I'm going to use a really pigmented blue, and I'm going to splotch it on. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes because my Audible book ran out, so I had to get another one started. And then after a couple minutes, I just used a little water to spread what I already had on, and you'll see what it looks like when it dries. For the bottom, I'm not drawing first. I'm using water here to draw my shape, and then I'm dropping in that same pink we used above, which is red. All right, so I'm actually going to dilute some of this after I splatter some splotches about so that I can keep all the color on one side and sort of give it a little depth. So back to this purple. It was bothering me. It was going to dry so light. So I put a little bit of a, I don't know, trapezoid down on the paper and then popped in that purple. Oops. If you do get a little watercolor where you don't want it, just use a dry cloth to wipe it up. So I got a couple purples. One is a paste and one is my insanely pigmented Dr. P.H. Martin's Hydrus watercolors. I'll show you those right here. Do not go out and buy these. They're pretty expensive, but if you're at the craft store and you have a coupon, you can get individual colors because they're insane. This isn't even a whole drop, and it looks black, but watch this. All I have to do is drag out a little bit of that color. I have to tell you, I watercolor with these. I dye things with these, including faux fur. I also use these for hand lettering. They're just so pigmented and beautiful. So I'm leaving a little light space in that center there for my nose, and then I'm going to splotch on the rest of it. And then this last guy is made the same way. I'm just going to add tiny little drops to an outside rim, like a coffee stain, and then bring in just fresh water for the middle. I made little feet just by dropping in the same like watercolor, liquid watercolor. And then I'm going to blend these two together. Now, I got a whole lot of water on this one. It started mixing. I didn't want it to, so I'm going to blotch that out using a Kleenex. Super simple. I waited until the next day for everything to dry, and then I just made some outlines using the micron. I end up going over the micron because it is so thin. I think this is a 0.03. It's very thin. Stick with the Sharpie fine liner or any Sharpie, really. All right, so I'm going to make her a little rotund, and I don't know how to make braids, so I just make these little doodle lines, and, well, you can use your imagination. Because everything is dry and we use Sharpie, we can go ahead and cut these out. And so I'm using a paper trimmer, but you can use scissors. I'm also going to show you, I used some pinking shears that are supposed to be used for fabric, but they were on my table because I'm still packing everything up. I just think it gave the little bookmarks something cute. All right. I did layer some white acrylic paint for the beard on this really vibrant purple one. And because I only did a really thin layer, it looks great. It's pretty cool. I used some Dollar Tree yarn to make some tassels. I popped a hole in there, threaded it through the front, tied it on. I did a double knot in the back so it wouldn't come undone, cut off the excess, and then I made a few more. So you can see I gave the little girl 2 because she's special. Hey, that's it for me today. Pretty calm, pretty chill little craft here. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe for more crafty fun.